What is up, guys? It's the VAG dude once again coming at you, doing an oil change today on the Q3, and I'll be talking about just some things to go over when you're getting ready to do an oil change yourself. This video is going to apply to all EA 888 Gen 1 and 2 found in the EOS, the GTI, the Tiguan, the Q3, the 8PA3, and a couple other cars on that platform as well. Some people are intimidated by changing their own oil, and let me tell you, it's way easier in most scenarios than you would think. First thing you got to do is make sure you're getting the correct oil. Your manufacturer is going to specify what types of oil to use for your individual vehicle, whether it's an Audi, Volkswagen, or really anything around that nature. It's all kind of formed around the same principles when changing it. But first step is make sure you're getting the right oil. Second thing, you might need to replace your crush washer. I replace my crush washer after every single oil change. Your crush washer is what's going to go on the other side of your drain plug to ensure that you're getting a good fit when you screw your drain plug back in. It is basically in itself what it is. It's a crush washer, and it'll crush it to make a good fit. Number two, got to make sure you have the correct size oil filter. Your oil filter is this guy right here, this black looking teacup looking thing. It's going to be different location on all different types of cars, but for these TSI 2 liters, they're going to be right on top, which is nice and convenient and easy to reach. And number three, before you get started with anything, YouTube's a great platform. Go out there, check some videos out if you're not working with a Volkswagen or Audi 2 liter TSI. I guarantee it's out there on how to change the oil. Make sure you have the proper tools. For this guy, you're going to want a simple ratchet, a variety of sizes of Torx. Don't need the security locking ones that have the little holes in them. I have these for a couple other things, but they'll work. I'll get you the sizes real quick for what you need. You'll need that ratchet. I recommend some rubber gloves, latex or not, doesn't matter. And definitely you're gonna want an oil drain pan. I've got stuck in some crappy situations where I've actually was draining the oil and it ended up overflowing. Stupid me, because you got to make sure your oil specification, how much oil is going to be coming out of the motor, or how much is supposed to be coming out of the motor, because you do not want overflowing oil in your garage. It's a pain to clean up, and if you don't wait long enough for your engine to cool down, it might be pretty hot. So now that you got everything you need, you have your oil, your tools, your crush washer if applicable, your oil filter, you're going to want to safely jack or put your car on some sort of lift to get underneath. Depending on how much ground clearance you are or you have, this will be easier or harder for some. For me, the Q3 has plenty of ground clearance, but I went ahead and put them up on my wheel ramps. These guys are rated at 12,000 pounds, or basically 6 tons. Get them secured, make sure your e-brake is on. And always want to make sure that your oil drain plug is the lowest point of basically where the oil comes out. You want all the oil to drain out of your engine after you take out the oil filter and everything. So just make sure you have enough ground clearance to get under there. Make sure you're doing this safe. Make sure your e-brake works, of course. I have an electronic parking brake for this guy. Give your car a little shake, a little wobble. Make sure lay out something nice and get some proper lighting. And we'll dive into the next step. One mistake that I've made in the past is getting too ahead of myself and too impatient to get going on the oil change. Let me tell you, it is extremely worth it to wait for your car to completely cool down. Otherwise, in these cases of motors, you'll be fighting taking off the oil filter. If it's hot, just wait, do it the right way, make sure it's cold, get a rubber glove on there, and just in general, you don't want to be burned by hot oil. I've seen it happen. Just wait, be patient. Even if you're in a crunch, it's worth it. Let your engine cool down. Something that I have and I use to make sure, obviously, if you don't have a temp gun, totally okay. All you gotta do is make sure that, you know, it's cool to the touch. Usually with the backs of your fingers, not the front. But you can go and test top your engine. It's still reading at 149, which is obviously too hot to touch. We won't really be touching up there, but checking the oil filter, that's still 131 degrees, which is too hot for my liking. Really up to you guys, but if you don't wait, it's going to be a pain in the butt to get it off. So I highly recommend waiting until it cools down. Next, some cars, a lot of cars on this platform, this specifically the PQ35 platform, will have some sort of splash guard, if you would call it. I would not call it a rock guard of any sort. It's more of just a splash guard, which I'll go and show you. It's going to be a couple of Torx, I believe, T25s maybe? I'll double check on that. But you're definitely going to have some sort of splash guard, which you'll need to take off prior to draining your oil. Next, I want to go over oil spec. I know I talked a little bit about that earlier, but for me, I've ran Mobil 1. I've ran Liqui-Moly, which is highly recommended for Audi Volkswagens. And if you can afford to do it every oil change, go for it. For me, I'm actually a VW Audi employee, so of course I'm going to use the discount. I go and pick up some SAE 5W40. It is Volkswagen Audi's in-house blend of oil. It meets the VW 502 spec as well as the 505 spec, which I believe is for the TDIs. Now, Audi's oil change interval, they say 10,000 miles, which I would never, ever, ever, even on full synthetic, go 10,000 miles. And I think the reason why they say that is to keep... honestly, I don't know. I'm not going to make up some answer of why it is. They don't know how everyone drives. I tend to drive a little more spirited than most people, maybe than some other VW Audi owners. But you never want to go to that interval, even on full synthetic oil. I'm a little bit of a crazy person. I go and change my oil about every 3,000 miles, 2,800 miles, just because it doesn't hurt the motor. There's no break-in period for the oil. And with synthetic versus conventional oil, synthetic oil will not break down, but it will get dirty, especially with direct injection, high compression, turbocharged motors. That oil will get dark on you fairly quickly, so be on the lookout for that, and use your discretion. 5,000 miles, totally okay. Upon removing the oil filter, however hard it may be, you may have a hard time. If you over tighten it, that might be an issue, but usually you can get it off with a nice rubber glove and some elbow grease. So upon moving your oil filter, you'll be left with what you see as a basically like a mating point of where the oil filter were threaded into in the middle, around the outside. Go ahead and clean that up. Just be warned when you go and take off that oil filter on these engines, they are going to still have some oil in it. So be ready to throw it in some sort of oil pan so you don't get oil all over your floor. Next, clean up around here, around the perimeter over here. Make sure you got a nice clean surface for when you install the new oil filter. At this point in time, I like to go install the new oil filter while I'm up here. In this case, I get mine from the dealership themselves. This is the OEM oil filter for these motors. Pretty standard oil filter. It's fairly large for an engine of this displacement, but I'm not going to ask questions on that front. I like to go and grab some oil from down in there, dip my finger and lube up this little O-ring on it so that there's no bunching or anything and your oil filter won't leak. Go dip your finger down in that oil. There should be a little bit in there. Just a little bit on the finger, and go ahead and lube up that O-ring. Work your way around the whole thing. You don't need to overdo it. You just want to get a little bit of oil on there. Go grab some more so that there's no issues in the lubrication department. Get that guy nice and lubed up, just on that O-ring right there, and go and plop your oil filter back and down in there, line it up, make sure you don't cross thread it, take your time with this guy, get some pretty long threads, work your way in, almost there. And get it just about hand tight. You don't want this to be too tight. That'll do it just right there. Just hand tight. And now we can move on to draining the oil out of the oil. Moving on to under the car. Got my car up on the ramps here. You're gonna go ahead and remove all these Torx bits on the front part of this splash guard. The ones on the sides. 2 all the way on the back, 1 there and 1 there. And if applicable, you'll have a bolt here and a bolt here. These are 13 millimeters. Probably won't have these on my car. I put these because the clip broke off from the previous owner. But go ahead and take off all those guys to free up the heat shield. Now that you have your splash guard moved out of the way, You will be exposing your subframe, everything else under here, including your transmission pan with the drain plug, and most importantly, your oil pan with the drain plug and the fluid and temperature indicator down here. So now at this point, you're going to go and grab your whatever you're draining your oil into and start draining your oil. Okay, so for draining your oil, get your oil, whatever you're draining it into. You're going to be using a ratchet and a T45 Torx bit to get this out. Recommend rolling up your sleeve or wearing a glove, however you want to do it. Make sure your ratchet is set to loosen. Line yourself up with the drain bolt and break that guy loose. Get your pan ready, it's going to shoot out. From this point, I like to actually detach the ratchet. It's going to start to leak a little bit here. I like to detach, do it by hand thus far, and I like to hold my pan right under it like this. We'll start leaking some fluid. Take this out, grab the plug, boom. If you're good, you won't spill any oil or splash it anywhere. You'll need this plug. Don't drop it into your oil, whatever you're draining your oil into, because you don't want to go fishing for this later on. This car, for this engine, this TSI is going to drain about anywhere between 4.5 to 4.8 quarts of oil, depending on the age of the motor, how much oil you're burning, or how much was put in last time. So let that guy drain out. Put your plug off to the side, give it a quick cleaning, and let this guy drip out and drain, and we'll come back to it in a few. While your oil is slowly draining out the bottom, go and wipe off your drain plug, your drain bolt, whatever you want to call it. And go and inspect the threads, make sure they're in good shape. Drain plugs are really cheap to replace. This guy is one oil change old, so it's totally okay. I like to go and take the crush washer that you'll get from the dealership and go and install it on the plug. There's going to be a side that's a little more flat than the other, and then that's, in this case, it's going to be this side as opposed to this side. So for this, I'll go and install the flatter side down onto the drain bolt like so, and this will be the orientation it takes when it goes right back into where it came out. The crush washer in the proper orientation. Go and hook up your torque wrench to it. The drain plug for these cars is going to be 20 or 21 foot-pounds, or if you're in Europe, it'll be 27 newton meters. Make sure you hear that click. Make sure it's torqued to the right spec. Make sure you got a nice mated surface. Back to the oil pan. Go and clean up around there. You like to do just a quick cleaning while I'm down here, nothing major. And you are good to go. Time to fill it back up with oil. Moving back up top, here's your fill port where the fill cap comes off. If you want to use a funnel, you may want to if you're using some of those bigger containers like this guy that'll hold 5 quarts. In my case, I'm using 1 quart bottles for each fill up. And again, for these motors, the EA AAA Gen 1 and 2s, they're going to take 4.8 quarts of oil. So I like to go, don't worry about it, just dump all 4 of these in. And then on this guy, you're going to dump almost all of it in. These guys have the measurement on the side, a lot of them do. Make sure you don't put all 5 quarts in, although you should be fine if you do accidentally. But like I said, 4.8 quarts, go and start filling. A lot of you guys, but if you are having trouble making sure all the oil goes into where it's supposed to go, make sure the bottom of the bottle is in a very low point so that the pivot to the oil fill hole is closer, and that way you can get a more accurate fill with your oil. After you've filled up your motor with the designated amount, for in this case again it's 4.8 quarts, go ahead and reinstall your oil fill cap, back it off your ramps. If you're on some, take it off the jacks. Start your car up, let it run for a second, turn it off, check the dipstick, fill accordingly. You should have some left in your bottle of oil. Fill accordingly until you're perfectly in between or towards the max line on the oil dipstick. I usually let it run again for 3, 4, 5 minutes before I go and drive it. Lets the oil circulate all around. Check for leaks before you throw that pan or underbelly back on. Make sure your oil plug was installed properly. Go ahead and reinstall your splash guard back on the car. Make sure you're discarding of your oil in the proper manner. You can't throw that shit out. Fill it back up the empty bottle that you just used. Drop it off in an AutoZone or the dealership. A lot of places take oil. Besides from that, that's all there is to it. Reinstall your engine cover if applicable. Mine doesn't fit because my catch can. And that will complete today's video of how to change your oil in these EA 888 Gen 1 and Gen 2 motors. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Any constructive criticism is welcome. And that'll be all. I look forward to seeing you guys in future videos. Let me know what kind of maintenance you guys want to see. And that'll be all. Bag Dude out. See you guys in the next one.